Good morning, friends. Happy day 12. Day 12 of Vlogmas. I'm going to be perfectly honest. When I sat down, like when I decided that I was going to film the entire Advent spin, I didn't think I was going to make it past day 5. So day 12 feels huge. This is the last day of our Vlogmas spin. And it's bittersweet. I have feelings. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this whole month. It's been a real treat. It's been a real treat. So today we're doing Q&A, which I've, if you've watched the videos leading up to this. So I have a list of questions. And I pulled questions from you guys, people who left me questions in the comments. Those are the questions I'm answering. I did get some questions from people on Instagram, so I'm answering those questions. A lot of the questions that were asked in the beginning when I first started the podcast have been answered in like separate separate Vlogmas episodes. And a lot of it are some of the questions I've answered in like my origin story. But there were a few really good ones, and some of them had overlap. So I tried to like put them together in questions that would be easy for me to answer without going off on tangents. We might go off on tangents. I'm apologizing in advance if we go off on tangents because it might happen. It is 9 o'clock because today's the first day of my holiday break. So I didn't have to wake up at 5 o'clock to film this before work because I don't have to go there. I'm off for some time. I'm really excited to kind of rest and have like a fibercation and do all the making and spend time with my family. But enough about that. That's not what you're here for. So here's how day 11, my nemesis, spun up. Here's a bobbin. I love the colors in this, and honestly, I have to remember, there must be some reason that I keep calling Rambouillet my nemesis. Like, it cannot be just because I'm a Scorpio and I need something to hate. Like, that doesn't seem like a good enough reason. There has to be a reason why I've been calling Rambouillet my nemesis, but this was like a delight to spin. So maybe Rambouillet and I just needed a break from each other. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe we just needed a break from each other, and we've had like a 5-month break, and now I like it again. We'll have to decide. But I will open my last bundle. So this is the last Advent bundle, and this one had a little wreath. There's a little wreath. Had a little wreath attached to it. And let's see what Jen has for me on day 12. This says day 24 because it was a 12-day Advent, and I decided to stretch mine out over the whole month. I honestly don't think I would have done all the spinning if I tried to do it 12 days in a row, just because it's busy. So doing it every other day was really manageable. The present dance. I forgot to do the present dance. Now that's out there for the whole internet to see. So there you go. I can't believe I did that. But yes, the last day. This one just seems harder to open than every other day. Oh, what are you? Oh, it's BFL again. Okay. This is pretty. This is really pretty. This feels like a dream. This feels like a beautiful pastel dream. All right, here it is. There's literally nothing not to like about this. So it has yellows and purples. Which way? This might be better. Yellows, purples, light teal, pink. It's beautiful. There was nothing not to like about this. It's absolutely beautiful. And I think it's going to be a delight to spin. Has really good handle. I enjoy BFL a lot. It's like BFL is like the long wool that everyone like finds attainable because it doesn't have the toothiness and not the like high micron count that some of the other long wools do. So it's a delight to spin. Okay. I'm going to put my questions on the floor next to me so I can look down as I'm spinning. I'm going to change my camera and we're going to start chatting. Okay, we are moving right along. I am spinning this at 18 to 1. I'm going to do a little bit. We're going to see if we get the curly cues that we were getting when I spun the BFL silk at 18 to 1. And if we get that, then I'll drop the ratio. But I spun the BFL the first time it was in this Advent. At 18 to 1, and I didn't have any issues. So we'll see. Okay. I just had to spend a solid 6 minutes fussing with my wheel because I don't even know what it was doing. I ended up just taking the bobbin completely off of it and starting over because I'm assuming something just was not lining up properly and my bobbin was like whirling. It was the wildest thing. I also did decide to drop a ratio to 15 to 1 just because I didn't want to risk having the same issues that I had when I spun the BFL silk. So I did drop the ratio to 15 to 1. So we are spinning. It was very long and frustrating 7 minutes trying to figure out what was wrong with it. And I know it was 7 minutes because this has been recording for 8 minutes and I have not said anything. Okay, so Q&A time. One of the first question that I have is a loaded question, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to answer it, or attempt to begin to answer it. And the question was, which spinning wheel would you recommend for a beginner? And the answer is, I don't know. So there are a lot of features in spinning wheels that would make it hard to decide what to recommend to a beginner. It's, do you want single treadle or do you want double treadle? Because if you want a single treadle wheel, then those are a different category of wheels than a double treadle. I knew that I never wanted a single treadle wheel. I knew I only wanted double treadles. But that's not everybody's experience. So it's, do you want single treadle or do you want double treadle? Do you want Irish tension or Scotch tension? Or do you want something that you can like manipulate to do both depending on what project you're working on? Because again, that is a different set of wheels. Do you want double drive? I've never spun in double drive. I have no desire to learn how to spin in double drive, but there are some people who love double drive. So it's like, do you want double drive? And then the biggest question is, what is your budget? What are you willing to spend on a wheel? Are you looking for a wheel that's new to you? Are you like looking for a secondhand wheel? Because if you buy a wheel secondhand, your money's going to go a lot further and you might be able to get a more quote unquote higher end wheel versus if you buy a wheel that's new. I know what people recommend to beginners. Like any of the Ashford wheels, the Ashford Kiwi is recommended for beginners. The Ashford Joy is recommended for beginners. And they tend to be at a lower price point than say like a Matchless, right? Like you can get a Kiwi for much lower in terms of what you spend than you get a Matchless. But there's also the e-spinners. The Dreaming Robots Electric Eel Wheel Nano and the EEW6 are both beautiful and amazing spinners and are going to be like less than half the cost of a traditional treadle style wheel. So it's like, do you want treadles or do you just want to spin? And if you just want to spin, will you consider an e-spinner? So to answer that question, I would say you have to decide what you want in a wheel. And once you decide what you want in a wheel, then it's easier to decide what wheel to recommend to you and what you're looking for. I love my Lendrum. I think it's a beautiful wheel. It's modern, it's sleek, it spins. I feel comfortable saying that it is a great starter wheel, but I think like the full Lendrum kit retails for like $900 plus US. I got mine secondhand, so I did not pay that. But that's a huge investment if you don't even know if you want to spin, right? So I would say instead of wondering what a starter wheel is, start looking at whether you can go try wheels. See if you have a spinning guild in your town. If there's a place you can go just like try on a few different spinning wheels, sit at a few of them and treadle, see what feels good and like what body mechanics feel good, see what settings feel good. And if you don't have a spinning guild, if you have spinning friends locally, that'll let you just come sit at a wheel. Or what you really could do is wait until there's a fiber show or a fiber festival if you can get to one. Because people bring their wheels to like at Rhinebeck, there were people spinning everywhere. And I got to sit down and I got to try out a Matchless at Rhinebeck, oddly enough. I think a Matchless is going to be like my ultimate wheel. It's going to be the last wheel I get. But it was an experience. But if you can, get to a fiber festival and see what wheels people are spinning on there and try them on and then decide. But it's very hard to go, this is what the beginner wheel is, because spinning wheels are so different and have a myriad of options. And so I just wanted to get that like out there, that like I don't know if I could recommend a beginner spinning wheel. I think the Lendrum's a great wheel, period. But it's expensive, and it's a huge undertaking to invest in if you can't try a wheel out first. So that's my answer, is try wheels out and then make that decision for yourself. Okay, so someone asked, how do I decide which fiber festivals to attend? Do I have any plans for fiber festivals for 2023? And are there any on my bucket list? I think that was like 3 different questions that I combined in one. So I go to Rhinebeck because, 1, it's Rhinebeck, but 2, also because I live in New York City. And so the first 2 years that we went to Rhinebeck, Joshua and I, the first 2? No, this is my second Rhinebeck. What year are we in? Did I go in 2020? No, no one did anything in 2020. Okay, last year when we went to Rhinebeck, we rented a car and we did an Airbnb and everything. This year we decided to go to Rhinebeck like 2 years before the Fiber Festival. So we took a train. We took the Metro North out of New York City to Poughkeepsie and then took a cab to the fairgrounds. So Rhinebeck is a very good like impulse, oh, I really want to do this Fiber Festival even though I didn't plan anything thing for me, because it's so local. Next year, Joshua and I are doing Rhinebeck, but we're also doing Maryland Sheep and Wool, which I'm really excited about. One of my friends is going to be road tripping from across country, and we're going to meet there, and we're going to hang out, and we're going to do like the whole couples thing where our husbands just kind of sigh exasperatedly at us, and Meg and I go buy outrageous amounts of fiber and pretend that they're not there. So that's on my plan. So Rhinebeck and Maryland Sheep and Wool are on my plans for 2023. If there is another Frock Tales in 2023, I will 100% be in there, and I will start my outfit early enough that I can make something really interesting. And I will not make my dress 3 days before the event like I did this year. And the Fiber Festival, there's a few Fiber Festivals that's on my bucket list. I really want to go to Black Sheep Gathering, but that's all the way in Oregon, and like we can drive to Maryland Sheep and Wool. We're not driving to Oregon, and so that's like that's going to be a bigger expense, and it's going to require a bit more planning than like, all right, let's just rent a car and drive to Maryland Sheep and Wool. But I really want to go to Black Sheep Gathering one year, and I really want to go to Knit City in Toronto. Part of the reason why I want to go to Knit City in Toronto is I just want to meet Rachel. Let's just take this tension down a little bit. Part of why I want to go to Knit City in Toronto, I'm just checking my bobbin. There are no unfortunate pigtails. I think dropping a ratio is a way to go. I want to meet Rachel at Wool and Spinning. And I know if I hike all the way to Toronto, the odds of me meeting her are very high in my favor. I would love to meet Felicia of the School of Sweet Georgia. And also, the Canadian wool scene is rad. And I just want to see how different it is than the wool scene in, like, you know, my neck of the woods. So Knit City and Black Sheep Gathering are on my bucket list of fiber festivals, but I will 100% be at Rhinebeck and Maryland Sheep and Wool for 2023. So if you're going, say hi. What is a fiber you'd love to try spinning but has eluded you so far? Okay, so what I'd really, 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 really love to try spinning, and this sounds ridiculous, I want Shetland from the Shetland Isles. Like, I want British Shetland. I know that American Shetland, like a lot of the Shetland fleece that I buy have been mixed genetics with flocks from Britain. So, like, I'm getting the closest thing. But I want a Shetland sheep. Like, I want a Shetland fleece from a Shetland that's living on the moors of the UK and is getting that, like, salty, briny air from the sea. And it's frolicking up and down. Can you tell that I'm romanticizing this? That it's frolicking up and down the coast and is like chilling on cliff sides and is just like looking despondently off into the distance, and it just doesn't, you know, it's like the sheep version of like an Edgar Allan Poe poem. That's what I think Shetland sheep are like. I really want a British Shetland sheep, Shetland fleece, which is going to be very hard to get because, one, it would probably be expensive to get a fleece shipped all the way from the UK. And 2, I don't even know people would ship a fleece all the way from the UK. But there was like a YouTube channel. I really want to say it was like the Shetland Breeders Association, but I can't remember. But they were doing like a Shetland Wool Week, and they were interviewing all these Shetland farmers from the UK. And I was just like, man, you guys live the most magical life. Now, obviously, it's a lot of work, and I'm romanticizing it. And if I was living that life, I probably wouldn't think it was the most magical life. But it looks magical on YouTube. So that's one thing. The other thing that has eluded me that I will eventually get my hands on is I really want to spin Ryland. I think Ryland is a Canadian breed, because it's only my Canadian friends that I see that spin Ryland. But I really want to spin Ryland, and I don't need a whole fleece, but I just want to see what it's like. And because it's foreign and it sounds mystical and I can't get it, and that's why I want it. I'm sure that it's just, I'm sure it's just as lovely, the stuff that we get here, but because I can't get Ryland here, I want Ryland. So there we go. That's that answered. Someone wants to know why Rambouillet is my nemesis. And this is an excellent question, because the answer is I don't know. I think what was happening was I was spinning nothing but Rambouillet. Because so much of my comb top stash is Rambouillet. Because I was buying based on color and not really paying attention to what fibers I was buying. So I have so much Rambouillet, and I was trying to make a dent in my fiber stash at one point, especially during my 100-day project. And so much of what I ended up spinning was Rambouillet, and I think I just got bored. I think I got bored, and I think I got tired. And then I started missing my more medium wools, because Rambouillet is like a super fine squishy wool. And I think I started missing my more medium wools, and I think I just started getting aggravated with how much twist Rambouillet needs. And I think we just needed a break. But because I am a Scorpio and I have a Scorpio stellium in my chart, and there's so much dark energy in my chart, I have decided that Rambouillet is my nemesis, and that is the story that I'm telling everybody. Because I spun Rambouillet 2 days ago, and it was a dream. It was a treat. It spun beautifully. There was no issue. So I don't know why I keep saying, I don't know. I think we just needed a timeout, and now that we are off timeout, we're okay again. Listen, I'm never going to reach for fine wools. Like, that's never going to be my wheelhouse. I can spin a fine wool just fine, but if I have a choice, I'm going to choose something that's on the medium toothier edge anyway. But I don't think it's fair to say that Rambouillet and I are that's my nemesis anymore. But I will keep saying it because it's entertaining. So there we go. That's that question answered. The short answer is Tashiana makes up stories and then keeps telling herself them, even if they aren't true anymore. So someone wants to know, I think this is Haley's question. How old were you when you first found out that you loved working with textiles and fiber? So I knit my first project when I was like 15 or 16. And I taught myself to knit through YouTube University, as you do. And then you put it down, and I didn't pick it back up until, like, I think a lot of people did during 2020 when I was home. Yeah, so I picked it back up during 2020 when I was home. That's when I decided I wanted to knit, and I wanted to weave tapestry, and I wanted to do all those things. So my love affair with fiber came on very, very quickly. And it happened in a very short amount of time. I've had my spinning wheel for only 2 years. It happened in a very, very short amount of time, and it happened very quickly. It was like a hurricane. It was like one day I knew nothing about wool, and the next day it was all I wanted to do. And I think that's how I knew that it was like real, because there was no like rising interest. It was literally one day I cared nothing about it, and the next day I couldn't stop thinking about it. So it's only been 2 years. So I guess, like, yes, I was knitting when I was 15, and I knit for like 2 years, but then I stopped, and I wasn't at all interested in picking it back up. Now I did do like miscellaneous and peripheral fiber crafts. So I did do embroidery. I have a bunch of like little hoops, like 6-inch hoops that have little embroidery projects on that I bought like patterns on Etsy. I have so much embroidery floss. And I think that's the other thing about textiles, is I was always peripherally picking up things. I never really got to like the spinning and knitting until this year, but I kept doing things that were like fiber related, like embroidery. I have so much embroidery floss. I have like those little plastic tubs where you get to organize by color. And there's so many greens. Like, I just kept buying greens over and over, clearly, because green's my favorite color. So I was just attracted to greens. And I have a bunch of like little 6-inch hoops that have embroidery designs. And I have like a little hoop wall. And I have them all just hanging on a wall. And I actually was thinking about picking it back up the other day, because it would be nice to do that in bed. But now that I have my e-spinner and I spin in bed, I don't really do much besides spin and knit. But it would be nice to pick up embroidery. The problem with it is I need to get like a light. Not the problem. I need to get a light, because the daylight is fading so quickly here, and I need to be like, it's hard to see at night, even with like my bedside lamp. So I think I just need to get one of those like fun neck lights, and I might do it again. But it was really, really nice, and I really enjoyed it. So I was like doing the embroidery hoop thing maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. Okay, so we'll say that my love affair for textiles picked back up with embroidery. 6 or 7 years ago, which would have made me 25. So we'll say 25. That feels like a good number. That's when I fell back in love with textiles and have not fallen out of love since. Okay, so someone asked, oh, I think this is Marceline's question. What comes first when you're planning or daydreaming, the project or the fleece? And that is, like, I don't have an answer to that. Because a lot of it is dependent on what I think the yarn wants to become. Like, what I think the fiber wants to become. And there are definitely some fleeces that I pick up with a project in mind. Sometimes when I go to sampling, even if I have a project in mind, if I don't like the yarn that I'm making with that project in mind, that project goes out the window. So like with my sidewalk chalk yarn, I knew I wanted to knit a slip over, and I knew I needed a 3-ply yarn. And I needed it to be 3-ply worsted to Aran weight. And I was pretty confident that I could spin that fiber into 3-ply Aran weight because it was just like really squishy and like plump. And I knew it would spin fine. But there's sometimes you get a bit of fiber that even if you want to make like a thicker yarn, only wants to spin fine. And then you have to decide if you want to spin like 4 or 5 plies to get a worsted weight yarn, or if you just want to change the project. So some fibers, like Rambouillet, spins fine beautifully, and I have so much trouble getting my Rambouillet to spin anything thicker than a 32 wraps per inch single. Then I'm fighting with the fiber, and I don't want to do that. So if I really wanted like a worsted weight Rambouillet project, I would need to spin 4 plies to get a worsted weight Rambouillet yarn. And that is not really something that I'm interested in doing. So I wouldn't pick like that Rambouillet fiber for a project that needs an Aran weight yarn. I would pick a different fiber that would be easier for me to spin to an Aran weight. So sometimes I start with just, this is what the yarn wants to become, and then based on how much yardage I get, I can pick a project, especially from spinning a fleece, because there's no guarantee that you're going to get the yardage you want. You do your sampling, you check your grist, you do all the things that you're supposed to do, but you might be like plus or minus like 100 yards based on just the error of hand spinning. Like, even if you check your grist, there's no guarantee every single yard is going to be exactly the same. And so you always get like a plus or minus like 5%. And if you have that plus or minus 5%, then do you have enough for the project you had in mind, or do you have to switch gears? So I think so much of my spinning just has to be flexible. I start with projects, and then I switch gears, or I just start with the yarn. Recently, I've just been starting with the yarn, and then after the yarn is finished and I check yardage, and I check the finished weight, and then I check the characteristics of the yarn. Does it have good loft? Is it round? If it's round, it would make a good textured or cable yarn, but if it's kind of oval and flat, maybe it would be better for color work or lace. And then I pick the project. Yes, so we'll say these days I'm mostly leaning towards starting with fleece and then picking a project that works for that fleece versus starting with a project. There are a few project spins, like my sock blend was a project spin and my sidewalk chalk yarn was a project spin, but those are just like, those are my blends. If I'm spinning a straight fleece, I tend to start with the fiber and then pick from there. That was a very long and convoluted way to get to answering that question, but we got there. Okay, next question. Oh, someone wants to know, what's the deal with letting your spinning rest and do you have to do it? Okay, let me tell you something. I am a rebel, and there are spinning conventions that make sense and that have lots and lots of history behind them, and that doesn't mean I do them. So the theory behind letting your spinning rest is that if there is a lot of energy in your singles, letting your spinning rest kind of lets some of that energy redistribute through your singles and kind of like eases out and makes it easier to ply and makes it more likely to have a balanced skein of yarn. I have let some of my singles rest for a week. I have not let my singles rest at all, and I don't see a difference in my yarn. I actually did a little bit of an experiment where I spun the same fiber across 4 bobbins, and one bobbin I let rest overnight. I spun it across 6 bobbins because I did no resting, resting overnight, and resting for a week. And I did not see any difference in my plied yarn. So there's tons of articles on why you should let your spinning rest and what it does for your singles. I personally just don't see a difference in my finished yarn. And so if I want to ply, I'm going to ply. Now, there are sometimes my bobbins rest for like months, because there are some days where I just want to spin singles, and then I ply in like a big bulk session, and I don't want to ply like until I'm ready to ply. And so sometimes things unintentionally get to rest, but I don't see a difference in letting my singles rest versus not letting my singles rest. The one thing I have not tried is if you let one ply rest and one ply you don't let rest, because that sounds like that would be a little bit of a kerfluffle. But I feel like if you don't let any of your bobbins rest, or you let any, you would have to do the experiment for yourself and see if it makes like a real difference in your finished yarn. It doesn't make a difference in mine, so I just do whatever. I literally just do whatever. I find that it makes a bigger difference rewinding my singles versus letting my singles rest, because rewinding my singles helps to get a lot of that energy out and redistribute the twist over the length of the singles in a way that I don't see resting doing. So your mileage may vary. Do your own sampling process, do your own testing process, and listen to a few more people who've been spinning for longer than me that might have a better answer to this. But I personally don't see any advantage to letting them rest, and so sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't, and I end up with like 99% of my yarns end up balanced anyway. Some of my chain plied skeins end up a little wonky because you have to put so much twist into a chain ply, but I don't think that has anything to do with the letting the singles rest, and has everything to do with how much twist you have to put in a chain ply yarn to chain ply it. So do your own sampling, and your mileage may vary, is what I feel comfortable saying about that. Okay, what's the deal with blah blah blah? Oh, someone was asking the difference between a traditional wheel and an e-spinner. So the main difference is that an e-spinner doesn't have a treadle. It has a motor. And a traditional wheel, you have to treadle. I like my e-spinner for a few reasons. One, I have like really intermittent hip pain. And there are some days that I just can't treadle. Like there's some days I can't sit like this and do the treadling. And so it's nice to be able to just crank on my e-spinner and not have to worry about treadle. So if you have any sort of like mobility impairments, if you have bad knees, if you have any of those things, then sometimes a traditional wheel can be a barrier to spinning. Like it does take a lot out of your body to sit here and treadle, and not everyone can do that for long amounts of time, and it's not fair for like someone who can't do that to like miss out on the joys of spinning. And an e-spinner removes a lot of that because you don't have to worry about hands and feet. It's just hands. Also, if you're a beginner, sometimes not worrying about hands and feet is a really cool thing, because you can just worry about your hands, and then if you want to add a treadle wheel later. The other thing is an e-spinner can just go a lot faster than I can go. And so when I draft, I'm limited by how much twist I'm putting in my singles, which is limited by two things. It's limited by the ratio that I can spin at, and then how fast I can treadle. I'm not trying to like race against my wheel and like have this be a frustrating experience. So I can't draft as quickly as I do with my e-spinner, because then I can just crank that baby up and I can zoom. And if I'm plying, I put that up to like max speed, and I can get through 8 ounces in a very short amount of time in a way that I can't do on my treadle wheel, because you have to wait for twist to build up as you treadle. So I reach for my e-spinners for like quick so I'm a process spinner most of the time, but sometimes you just want a quick product spin, and I reach for my e-spinners when I want a quick product spin because they're quick. But also I reach for my e-spinners when I have like hip pain, because I don't want to sit and treadle. I don't want to like have to sit at like a 90-degree angle and do all these things when I could just be resting and hanging out in bed and having bad ergonomics when I spin. But I really like my e-spinner. So that's the only difference. The only difference is one has a motor and one you treadle. There are so many e-spinners that are on the market right now, and it's making it way more accessible for spinners, which I really appreciate. And it's also making it a lot more portable, because you can take, you know, if you're traveling or something, you can take an e-spinner with you on a trip in a way that I did not load this bobbin nicely at all. So you'll have to forgive me when you see it. If you're traveling, you can take an e-spinner with you on a trip in a way that you can't like take a traditional wheel, because you can just put like an e-spinner in a backpack, you know, run it on a battery when you get where you're going, or bring your power source with you. But you can travel with your e-spinner in a way that you can't do it with your traditional wheel. So it's just making spinning more accessible, and they also tend to be at a lower price point than traditional wheels. So I kind of like that it's just opening up spinning for a lot of people that might not have been able to do it before. So I think e-spinners are rad. Someone's asking what fibers are easiest to spin and what I would recommend for a beginner. Okay, so this is another interesting question. I was told in the beginning, and I actually believe that this is true, that BFL and Corriedale, like if you're spinning top, obviously, that BFL and Corriedale are easier to learn on than like Merino or Rambo. And I think that that's true. BFL and Corriedale do not have as much crimp as Merino and Rambo do, and they also have a longer staple. And so the staple is important for distance of draft because, you have to watch the drafting triangle as you spin. If you're spinning a worsted yarn, and the drafting triangle is like that space right behind your drafting hand where the twist is let into your fiber. And with a longer staple and less crimp, I just think it's easier to learn what to look for. Also, you don't need as much twist for BFL or Corriedale, so they're just easier when you're learning the motions versus like a fine wool that needs so much twist and is going to have a shorter staple, so it might drift apart easier. I just find BFL and Corriedale to be really forgiving. So when people ask me what fibers I recommend for beginners, I almost always recommend BFL and Corriedale. I think they're both delightful fibers. I think they're both easy to spin. There are a few people in the Jillian Eve Discord server that are not Corriedale fans, which like blows my mind because Corrie's one of my favorite fibers. And they said that they learned on Merino. I had a lot of trouble learning on Merino, and so I just switched to a longer staple, less crimpy fiber, and I had a lot more success learning how to spin. So I would recommend something that's on the medium length. Oh, Lord, that got away from me. I would recommend something that's on the medium length in terms of staple, and maybe medium micron count, so it's not as fine and not as high crimp. So BFL Corrie, I think, are easier, and you're less likely to quote unquote over twist, because what is over twisting? You're less likely to over twist your singles with them. If you try to start with like I love a good Romney. I think Romney is really generous and really great fiber to spin. But the first time I spun Romney, because I was still learning, I made rope. So yeah, I would recommend BFL and Corrie to start, and then you could work your way up to the fine wools if that's what you're interested in. I'm finished with my spin, you guys. That's the Advent spin. I'm going to take my bobbin off. We'll switch to face for the rest of this because I still have a few more questions to answer, and then we'll say goodbye. Okay, before I forget, here's the bobbin. So like right here was today's spin. This is like the Rambo, but that is my 3 bobbins. We'll ignore the first one because half of that is on my bullfrog bobbin. But here are my 3 bobbins, and my Advent spin is all done. I'm super jazzed. I kind of want to apply this today. I might start applying this today. I might start applying it tomorrow. I think I'm just going to apply it on my Lendrum. I was like, should I apply it on my e-spinner? But I've been very bad about applying on my e-spinner because I try to put too much fiber on it and then it gets mad at me and it starts making fun noises. So I might not apply that on my e-spinner. I might actually apply it on my Lendrum and just finish the whole spin on my Lendrum. But a few more questions and then we'll say goodbye. Oh, here's a good question. Someone asked, was I surprised by the yarn I like to work with versus the yarn I like to spin? When I first started knitting, I only knit with superwash merino. And that's because that was, 1, that was readily available. 2, that's what all the like fancy indie dyers were dyeing. And when I first started knitting, I was knitting with mostly indie dyed yarn. And then if you go to the yarn shop, most of what's available is superwash. Even if it's not superwash merino. I first started knitting with a lot of Barocco yarns because those were like affordable. And then with like indie dyed yarns. Oh, and Quince & Co., which I don't even know where they are. And I don't think their stuff's merino, but I do think it's superwash. And so I first started knitting with superwash, and I thought that like superwash was like the be-all end-all. And because I enjoyed merino and the fine wool so much, when I was buying fiber, I was buying a lot of color and I was buying a lot of fine wools because that's what I thought I liked. And then I discovered, right after Rhinebeck of last year, I discovered Romney. And I was just like, oh, hold the phone. Hold the phone. 1, spinning from carded preps is rad, and I don't always need to spin from a combed prep. And 2, I kind of like a medium toothy wool. And that was a surprise because 1, I had never tried it. And that's the thing about never trying things. I'd never tried it because I just didn't think I would like it. So I never gave it a go. And then once I gave it a go, I was like, this is amazing. So I almost like And this is also why I want to de-stash, just because I almost never reach for my comb top stash bead anymore because so much of it is like fine wools. And don't get me wrong, fine wools are great, but what I'm really enjoying spinning right now are carded preps and carded like toothier preps. Yeah, so it was a huge surprise. It was a huge surprise. And also I enjoy knitting with woolen yarns more than I enjoy knitting with worsted yarns. I love the like squish factor. I love the warmth of them. I have so many woolen spun hats now. I just really enjoy knitting with woolen yarns. And so because so much of my stash is worsted superwash merino yarns, I'm probably going to rehome most of it. I don't feel like I should make myself knit with it because I bought it when someone else might appreciate it more than I will. So I was talking to some of my friends about it, and she was like, you know, you could just take a bunch of yarn to like retirement homes and they like love that stuff. And I was like, great. So actually over the break, I might pack up a bunch of like sock yarn. The other thing is socks and I have a bunch of sock yarn. Like that whole top cube right here is just individual skeins of sock yarn that I bought with the intentions of making socks and have never made socks. So it's going to be repurposed and rehomed. So yes, I was very surprised about the yarns I was knitting with in the beginning and the yarns I enjoy spinning and knitting with now. But I think I was just giving myself space and room to try something new. So yeah, do the thing, try something new. You might learn something cool about yourself and about your interests. Someone like thinks I have a really cool color palette, which you're a rad human, and was asking how I choose them. I let indie dyers choose for me, and then I just buy what I like. I've learned over time that I don't like high contrasty colors. I like more analogous shades. So like a lot of these braids were high contrast. So like this is definitely high contrast. The fact that it has blue. So actually, never mind. These are analogous colors. So it has green to blue to like purple to pink, then back to blue to green. Those are analogous colors. Those are colors that are like next to each other on the color wheel. But I wouldn't want to like spin something that has like purple and yellow next to each other, like that high, or like maybe green and red next to each other, like 4 ounces of that's high contrast. But I will spin it if it has like a gradient. So I like analogous shades and I like gradients, I guess. They're just colors that I'm not attracted to. Like I'm not attracted to red, so I wouldn't buy red fiber. I like deep golden rods, but I don't like sunshine yellow. I like ochre shades. So my ideal color palette is like blushes and like rose tones and like more muted corals, like pastel corals, ochre shades, clay, so like that burnt orange terracotta color, olive green. And so I tend to be attracted to colors that have, now for some reason I have so much pink fiber and I don't know what my problem is because I don't really enjoy pink, but I have so much pink fiber. Probably because there were other things in there with the pink. I'm looking at my fiber stash right behind me. That's why I keep looking right behind the camera, which is why I keep looking that way. I have so much pink. I don't know what my issue is. I don't know. But based on where my interests are now, that's what I'm attracted to. And so I tend to frequent the dyers who dye the color stories that I like. I love Beth at Spin Delicious. I love Jen at Wee Chickadee. I love Marianne at Three Waters Farm. And I love Adrienne at Hello Yarn. Those are the dyers that I frequent, but I'm also not buying any comb top, and I bought no comb top this year because I just have too much of it. I need to just make it. It needs to be spun up or donated or gifted or resold. Yeah, so I figured out my color palette early on, and I've stuck to it, and that also means that like I can do a combo spin really quickly because so many of the colors I have the similar tones. So like I can just pick up 2 random braids of BFL and make a combo spin and have it work, and I'd not be worried that it would be like clashy. Because so many of my colors overlap. Someone asked if I have I know who asked this question. If I have a record keeping system for technical details, and the answer is yes. I use a spinning journal, but my real record keeping system is Airtable. And when I do my fleece tour next week, I will show Airtable. Like I'll do like a screencast of it so you can see how I use it. But most of my technical spinning details are in Airtable. I do sometimes put notes in Ravelry, especially if I'm going to be linking a Ravelry spin to the description box of my YouTube video. So I'll put notes in Ravelry so people can see like what I was tracking and how I spun it. But my personal record keeping system is Airtable. I like Airtable because it's customizable. And then also I can like cross-link things across multiple tables. I'll show you when I do the video, but I love Airtable, and that is how I take my notes. And the final question that I wanted to answer is, what comes naturally to you, and what do you really have to focus on with regards to spinning? And I thought that was a great question. These days, 2 years into my spinning journey, what comes naturally to me is a fine yarn. My default single is anywhere from 40 to 32 wraps per inch. And that's what comes naturally to me. Even if I'm spinning long draw, my default single is 32 to 40 wraps per inch. And if I'm spinning a worsted yarn with my eyes closed, my default single is a 32 to 40 wraps per inch single. And that is just what comes naturally to me. And it makes me laugh because, like, that was always what I spun. Even in the beginning when my yarns had no twist, they were always fine. They had zero twists, they had zero integrity, they were not holding together, but they were always fine. I never had the stage where all I could spin was bulky yarn. And I see so many new spinners start out and all they can spin, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm talking about my personal journey. I see so many new spinners start out and all they can spin are like thick singles, and they're like, I wish I could spin fine. And it's like, honey, I wish I could spin a thick single. For me to spin a single that is thicker than 32 wraps per inch, I have to like focus in the zone, zero distractions, because the second I take my eye off my yarn, it is thinning out. So the singles that I spun for the sidewalk chalk yarn, because I needed that Aran weight yarn, those singles I think were like 20 wraps per inch, and I had to turn my e-spinner all the way down because that was the only way I could force myself to spin a thick single, is if it had low twist, so I had to slow down. Because if I had it at like the normal speed that I normally spun at, I would start defaulting because I wasn't thinking about it. So I had to spin super low twist to force myself to stop and pay attention at every length of this yarn. And then I spun it long draw, which was the other thing that helps, because when you spin long draw singles, you're trapping air in your yarn. So long draw low twist really forced me to pay attention, and that's how I got to spin that thicker single. But thick singles are going to be the death of me. Which is why I don't really spin worsted. Worsted I could do a 3-ply worsted weight, and it's actually probably like a heavier DK light worsted, and then I hope the yarn blooms in the washing. But like anything thicker than that, a worsted yarn is a lot of trouble for me, and it would require me to do like 4 plies, and I don't find that. At that, once I get there, I'm like, nope, I'd rather hold it double with something else than try to spin a 4-ply Aran weight yarn, because that's just a lot. Yeah, thick singles is definitely what I have to really, really focus on, because from the second I learned how to spin, or taught myself to spin, I was spinning fine singles. So yeah, you guys, that's Vlogmas. Here, I can't believe I have my... I'm really excited to see what this looks like plied up. Like, I'm really excited to see what these bobbins become and what yardage I get. And because I think I want to knit... Andrea Mowry has like the Attune shawl, which is made for just like wild color changing yarns. And I think it's like a 3-ply is what it is. So I have 12 ounces of yarn here. On average with my default, and I spin a 3-ply, I tend to get like 250 yards. So hopefully I get that. I would get like maybe 700 to 800 yards here. And if I get 700 to 800 yards here, that's enough for that shawl. And if not, I'll just stash it and hold on to it for something new. But you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me this December. Thank you so much. I have had, it's really bittersweet now that it's over, because one, I don't have to get up and like edit and film every other day, because that is a lot. And not even the filming, the editing every other day is a lot. So it's really bittersweet because I don't have to do that anymore, but also like it's now become part of my routine to like sit and spin and chat with you guys, and it was a real treat. So thank you for spending this month with me. Thank you for every thoughtful and sweet comment you guys have left on these videos. I am so new to this, and you guys have been so encouraging and so receptive, and I'm a puddle of emotions now. I'm a puddle of emotions. I didn't think this is what was going to happen at all. So you guys have shown up for me in the best of ways. And honestly, that was the best Christmas gift I could have received. So if you do celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a magical holiday with the people that are important to you. I hope Santa brings you something extra special. And I hope you find a little bit of peace and joy and light over the coming days. this is the last time I'll be on till the Christmas holiday, but then next week I have 2 more videos to film to wrap up the year, so I will be back before New Year. So I hope, also, if you're like in the Northeast or anywhere up north where this Arctic chill is coming, stay warm. It's gonna be 11 degrees with like, feel like minus something tomorrow, so I will be cuddled up under the covers with some knitting or some spinning, and I'm not going outside where the cold might try to kill me. But stay warm. And I hope Santa brings you something great. Thank you so much again, and I'll see you next week for some wrap-up videos for 2022. Bye for now.